promised 4 years ago at the Republican convention, I'm going to restore law and order in this country.
Except in Democrat-run cities. Look, we have laws. We have to go by the laws. We can't move in the National Guard. I can call insurrection, but there's no reason to ever do that, even in a Portland case. We can't call in the National Guard unless we're requested by a governor.
They're fucked. Get him out! Yo, stop that shit! Yo, stop that shit! Stop that shit! What happened? What happened? Hey, get up, bro.
Hey,
get up.
Hey, you don't do that shit, homie.
Hey,
get out.
nah, they losing. Hey, get up.
Hey, you don't do that shit.
Oh, shit. Looting.
We don't do that shit. No, we don't do that, bro. We don't do that. Hey, hey. No, we don't do that shit, homie. Hey,
no. Making us look bad. Damn. Now you good. Let's go. Hey, fuck them, boy. Hey, get the fuck out! What's going on, bro? They breaking shit down? Yo. Oh, shit. Damn. They took the money on. Damn, check that.
Let's turn to what's happening in California now and the clashes between police and protesters after ICE raids in that area. The president has called people taking to the streets insurrectionists and deployed the National Guard. Do you think that was an appropriate response by the president?
I do not think so. I think the president should allow local and state law enforcement to do their job to protect public safety. People have a right to peacefully protest. People cannot use violence, and anyone who's engaged in violence should be held accountable. But that's what the president has done, is thrown gasoline on a fire. He is enjoying the political spectacle for his own political purposes. But as Governor Newsom and others have said, state and local law enforcement are the appropriate parties to make sure that we protect public safety and hold people who are violating the law accountable.
When we were just reporting with our reporter in Washington, Yamiche Alcindor, that the administration is looking at potentially more raids and saying there could be more scenes like we're seeing in LA, in that area, around the country. How fearful are you about where this could all be headed?
Well, the administration has shown that it's prepared to abuse its authority in order to pursue its political agenda. And this is a time for all Americans, regardless of political party, to stand up and say that we have to protect the Constitution, we have to protect due process, we have to protect public safety. And that's what local law and state law enforcement officers do every day around the country without Donald Trump bringing in and nationalizing state National Guards.
On Sunday, the protests had mostly dissipated and streets were mostly quiet and calm. Since Trump announced his plan to deploy troops, the situation on the ground has escalated quickly, with unrest growing overnight, causing highways to close and putting people in danger. This wasn't the case on Saturday or Sunday morning. This was not inevitable. We'll never know what might have been had the president left our state and local authorities to continue the important work they were already doing and were more than capable of doing. What we do know is that what we saw yesterday happened after the president's unnecessary, counterproductive, and, most importantly, unlawful order. An order that abused the federal government's authority and violated the 10th Amendment and federal law. An order that skipped over multiple rational, common sense, strategic steps that should have been deployed to quell unrest and prevent escalation. As a result, I, in partnership with Governor Gavin Newsom, are suing President Trump and asking the court to set aside the president's unlawful action federalizing the California National Guard.
Law enforcement from all over Southern California has been deployed here in downtown LA to keep things locked down. We've seen officers from LAPD and neighboring counties, Ventura County, Orange County, Santa Barbara County, Pasadena Police, Hawthorne Police. Basically, every law enforcement agency in Southern California is here. I want to show you behind me right there. That is the federal building, and those troops and vehicles that you see, those are the National Guard troops that were deployed here by President Donald Trump in contravention of Governor Newsom's wishes over his objection. The backdrop to all of this, Ali, is all of the people who were detained by ICE in these large-scale operations over the last week or so. From what we know, ICE's numbers that they're giving us are about 118 people total, but we know very little about who they are. DHS has released some information about a small number of them, 11 or 12 of them, that they say are criminals, in some cases violent criminals. But one of the reasons we don't know much about the rest of them is because lawyers tell me, lawyers that represent people pro bono here in deportation proceedings, have told me that they have had a really hard time accessing these people. They are supposed to have access to the immigrant detention facilities, to the places where these people are being held in order to offer them representation in deportation proceedings. They have been prevented from reaching these people on several occasions. We did hear at a press conference just immediately before we went to air, Ali, from the families of some of the people who were detained in the Garment District factory on Friday. That was actually the raid that really triggered this protest, this response. I want to play you a little bit of what one of the daughters of the men detained had to say about the situation. Take a listen.
I demand the process of my father and the dozens of workers that were detained that day to have the right to speak to a lawyer and be representative how they're supposed to be representative. My family and I haven't had communication with my dad. We don't know nothing about him. We want justice.
What DHS has said about this in terms of people trying to access both the Metropolitan Detention Center, which is right behind me here in downtown LA, and other ICE facilities, is that they're keeping people from entering these facilities because of unrest, because of protests. It's a matter of safety for the attorneys, for law enforcement, etc. Lawyers are pushing back against that, saying that they should be given access to these people. As lawyers do slowly get access to the detainees throughout the course of today and the days to follow, we should get some more information about the people who were detained, whether they had criminal records, whether they were, as DHS has been presenting them, threats to the public, or whether they were just people doing their jobs at the work sites that ICE and other federal law enforcement targeted in these operations.
His state is a mess. And I'd like to get somebody involved in the rail because, look, personally, it should have never been built because you can fly there for $2. And what are you doing? They're doing that. You could drive. You could do lots of different things. You know,
But I had to stop here where the guns are. I want y'all to take pictures of these guns and let people know that they're in our city with guns, and I'm sure they have orders to shoot and kill. I don't know, But otherwise, they wouldn't have guns.
One question, Representative Ms. Waters. If there's one statement or a message that you could send to Donald Trump, what is that message here today?
My message to Donald Trump is you are a cruel human being, and that you are using the poorest people in the land, the most vulnerable people in the land, to promote your politics. You are wrong. We know what this is all about. We have people who are immigrants here who are trying to seek a better living, who have come from places where they have experienced this kind of thing that he's doing here today. People who work every day, people who are paying taxes, who are raising their families, who are supporting education. They should not be treated this way. They should be given an opportunity to tell their story, whom they are, and why they're here, and ask the United States to please do what the Constitution allows us to do, and that is give them consideration for having citizenship here.
Ms. Maxine Waters, thank you for those words. Another thing, do you find it coincidental that this is happening at this time of the year right now? Is there anything that you can correlate with the timeline that it's happening with right now alongside?
No, I think that the president has not been able to live up to the threat that he used during his campaign, where he was going to get millions of them out of here. And I think it's come to the point where he thinks he's got to show something. But also, his ridiculousness has taken over the armed services to celebrate his birthdays coming up. And people are saying, are you going to spend millions of dollars celebrating your birthday using the armed services to do it? And I think that adds to it. All of this is coming to the forefront now.
And Congresswoman, how should the city of LA and the state of California react to this? What's the smart play here?
All of the elected officials in this city should be on the street. The mayor should be on the street. The city council should be on the street. Everybody should be on the street. All of the state elected officials. All of us in Congress. We're supposed to be in Congress tomorrow. But I want you to know, I'm trying to stop him from getting richer and richer on crypto. The more money he has, the more powerful he has, the more he will elect people. So we got a lot of work to do.
So bodies on the street, basically.
Bodies on the street. People on the street. Absolutely.
Ms. Waters, before we let you go, anything that you can say to anybody watching or the public that wants to come out here or just simply watching or wants to know, anything that you want to tell them that they should do or shouldn't do?
Well, here's what I want to support. I want to support people having a voice. Peaceful protests are okay. They're all right. I want them to know what happened in the civil rights movement, where we got on the street, where we marched, where we fought, and we made the government change, and we got voting rights. Peacefully. And so people can protest peacefully. They should come out, and they should have a voice, and they should not allow the intimidation to force them to do nothing. Do something.
Do something.
Something.
Do not let the intimidation force you to do nothing. Do something. Words from Congresswoman here, Maxine Waters. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you.
Tom Homan to come and arrest him. Should he do it? Tom, I think it's great. Gavin likes the publicity, but I think it's a great thing. He's done a terrible job. Look, I like Gavin Newsom. He's a nice guy, but he's grossly incompetent. Everybody knows. All you have to do is look at the little railroad he's building. It's about 100 times over budget. We're putting a flagpole over there. Under budget. I always do under budget. What does your intel tell you about these people causing all the problems in LA? Are they people ICE is trying to deport, or are they professional agitators? The people that are causing the problem are professional agitators. They're insurrectionists. They're bad people. They should be in jail. Thank you.
Here you could see them stationed alongside their vehicles near the federal building as another protest is expected to take place later today near City Hall. This follows President Trump's deployment of 2,000 National Guard members in response to a series of immigration protests across the city. This is new video from overnight showing the troops arriving. They stopped at City Hall after driving through Paramount, then ended up here at the federal building. Meantime, this follows another night of protest.
People are very upset about these ICE raids in Los Angeles for these poor, terrified families. The initial promise was that these deportations would be for criminals only. That's clearly not what's happening here as they're trying to make certain numbers. What's your message to protesters? And also, what can elected officials do at this point? And your take on how Gavin Newsom is doing?
Well, I mean, my first message is to keep it peaceful. I mean, obviously, this is a moment where we have to be on the streets all over the country to protest what's happening to our immigrant community, but more broadly to protest what's happening to our democracy. This is the most corrupt administration in the history of the country, and we are going to rise to this moment by being out there on the streets. But ultimately, I think the country sees what Donald Trump is trying to do here. He's looking for a fight. There's nothing in what he is doing that is about peace or about restoring order. He's taking a protest that is relatively isolated. People in Los Angeles over the weekend would tell you that 99% of them went about their day, and it was pretty normal because this is not an invasion that has taken over the entire city. And he's trying to turn a protest that is pretty small into something that involves an even bigger confrontation so that he might actually be able to invoke the Insurrection Act. That would be a defining story of the week if he were to do it. And I just don't think, I think we have to make sure that we understand to not take him at his word. He's looking for a fight. He's not trying to calm tensions.
What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? Justice. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Justice. When do we want it? Now. And if we don't get it, shut it down. If we don't get it, shut it down. We don't get it, shut it down.
I think that you can't look at what's happening in California in a vacuum. This behavior by the President of the United States, this move towards authoritarianism, you have to look at it and the attacks on journalism, the attacks on law firms, the attacks on judges throughout the country, the attacks on higher education. None of these things are happening in a vacuum. And if you look at it in the totality, you see that we're drifting towards authoritarianism. Now, I find it a great bit ironic that there are people who are pro free speech and then have a problem with people who are protesting. No one around this panel, no Democrat in the country, I will not sit here and say that violence is okay or violence against law enforcement is okay. But what's rich is when you have people like Ron Johnson or Senator Mullen come on TV and talk about protecting law enforcement, but didn't say a doggone thing when we were pardoning those individuals on January 6th who assaulted law enforcement officers. So let's have a little balance in this discussion is all I ask.
California specifically, the president told reporters earlier that if he were you, he would have the governor of California arrested. Can you just clarify where that stands and if that is something that you personally are advocating for?
Like I did an interview yesterday with NBC reporter here's the conversation was, as you and I talked about many times, you can protest if you want, you have that First Amendment right, but when you cross the line of putting your hands on an ICE officer, impeding our enforcement operations, knowingly harboring, concealing illegal alien, that's a crime. And I said last night, they can protest all they want, when they cross that line, we'll seek prosecution. And last count, we had just about 50 protesters been arrested, criminally being prosecuted for violating the law. And when I reported asked me, would that include politicians like Mayor Bass or Governor Newsom? I said, well, of course. It includes anybody that commits a crime.
But Governor Newsom has not done anything to warrant an arrest in your view right now, correct?
I don't see him.
Not at this time, absolutely not.
It back, and so you've got, it's interesting because you've got the front group on that line. You see some people sitting, they've got their hands up, but then from the back of the crowd, you have people throwing fireworks. There's a bottle right there. So
it's back toward us, we would get trampled. Obviously, it's been so chaotic here, and I'm sure you can probably see from the chopper shot that there's just a lot of stuff being thrown, and as that escalates, it's just going to make this even more dangerous. It's just this simmering thing right now that will ultimately come to a boil. There's no question about it, and it's kind of, I don't even know if you can tell when you hear those boots, the way this is playing out, and I'm sure that the police can't let this go.
Now you've got this big gap between the protesters and the officers, and then eventually the protesters will start. Oh, see, that I think was CHP throwing something.
I think
CHP's.
It looked like one of the protesters came, picked something up, had his or her hands in the air, and then was hit by something coming from the other direction just now.
Yeah, there should be an officer, I think, on the right side of the screen that's got a launcher that they were launching. This is what we saw them do last night.
I don't know if they're like making a barricade. It sounded like they knocked something over. Yeah, wait. Oh, wow. Okay, they're all surging toward, and perhaps like a car, I think. Oh my gosh. This is nuts. Okay, so they're all, you might be able to see they're like behind a car right now. Now everyone's running. Oop, now everyone's running. All right, everyone's running.
Oh, that's a trash can. Are there people pushing the trash can?
They gave it one good push and go right into the officers.
Oh, the one guy stopped it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm outside the perimeter, Laura. Again, I think you heard John Miller explain it, and I think he explained it best. You know, as I was walking over to the officer, tried to explain who I was, identified who I was with. I turned. He said, "I'd like you to turn around." I turned around and I had my hands behind my back. They did not put me in zip ties, but they did grab both of my hands as I was escorted over to the side. They said, "You are being detained while we lead you out of this area. You are not allowed to be in this area." So they took me over to the side. They took down my name. They asked me where I was from. You know, they get your basic information. And I said, "Am I being arrested?" He said, "No, you're not being arrested. You're being detained." And so there's that. As press, these are some of the things that you take a lot of risks as press. This is low on that sort of scale of risks, but it is something that I wasn't expecting, simply because we've been out here all day. I've covered any number of protests, and normally there's the officers put the press, realize that the press is there doing a job, so to speak. And but again, this is what happened. It did not last long. Felt a little longer than what it was, but there you have it. But we are now outside the perimeter, and the protest, at least at this point, is being concluded. Getting back to the reason why we're here, and reporting on why we were here. They're making a number of arrests of those demonstrators who were left. About a couple of dozen or so. They had put out the announcement that anyone who was still here would be put under arrest for failure to disperse. And so at that point, that's when they took those demonstrators into custody after they had sort of boxed them in. But at one point we did ask, hey, can we get outside this perimeter so we can get a better shot? We were denied and told that we were not allowed to leave. And so at that point, as I told you before it happened, we would sort of play it by ear, and that's how it went down.
Flyers and posters saying
CNN?
It's time to escalate.
Wait 1 second, John. Hold on.
Yeah, go ahead.
Jason,
Yep.
what's going on? I hear you. Am I seeing Jason Carroll being? What happened, Jason?
I am being detained. I am being detained, Laura. I'm not being arrested. Correct, officers?
Did you hear what he told you?
No.
We're letting you go, but you can't come back right now.
Okay.
Because then if you come back, then you go.
Okay.
Okay, please?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, officer.
Take care. You too. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
What happened, Jason?
If you guys can still hear me, what happened was yes.
I'm Chris with the New York Times. We got video of you guys.
Oh, you did?
If you need it later,
thank you.
call New York Times.
I appreciate that.
I can hear you still, Jason. What's happening?
So here's what happened, Laura. The officer, I was called over, and the officer told me to put my hands behind my back. I said, am I being arrested? He said, you were being detained. I was walked out of the area. They took down my information.
Oh, I'm losing his IFB right now. I can't hear you, Jason. John Miller.
Yeah, I fully believe that this is a direct result of Gavin Newsom's failed leadership in California. The chaos in California is because Gavin Newsom decided to coddle criminal illegal immigrants, make his state a sanctuary state, and refuse to comply with the federal law. Donald Trump did not cause this chaos, but he is the one who is cleaning it up. Democrats chose abject failure in California, and now they are going to have to face the consequences of that. Gavin Newsom's so busy trying to make videos and sound pithy on Twitter. What he needs to do is put the phone down and get to work to make California safe, because people can't do their jobs right now. Kids can't get around. It's not safe in the city, and that's because of Gavin Newsom.
Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom, this is not 2020. This is not an election year. President Trump just won a decisive mandate. He won all 7 swing states. He won the House. He won the Senate. The people are behind President Trump. And for the record, California, after Florida, Texas, California, delivered votes for President Trump. We want what is happening here. And the crime. Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass underestimate how much Californians are sick and tired of their failed policies.
Sean, you're absolutely right. Excuse me. Law enforcement is using an incredible amount of restraint. These are from sources of mine on the ground, actual cops who are on the streets, who have been justified in several different instances where they could have used lethal force but didn't. They're under constant duress and they're under constant threat. So that's one. But I want to speak to the bigger picture with this here from the counterterror angle. This isn't a protest problem here in Los Angeles, Sean. This is a counterintelligence problem. And what's happening in Los Angeles isn't free speech. This is coordinated insurgency, which is what everybody understands, and what Nicole just alluded to. We've got political-backed money, digital organizing on platforms, masked agitators who are flooding the streets right now again with the Palestine flags, every other flag but the American flags, and politicians who are quietly standing behind this all. You just spoke to Newsom. No one's doing a thing. Bass isn't doing a thing. And so this has nothing to do with immigration. This is about control, Sean. Control of the streets. Control of the algorithm, and ultimately control of the country, which is what they're trying to do. And this is low threat domestic intensity is what this is. Insurgency. This is what this looks like. And if this was overseas, and we saw this happening right now with U.S. troops, mobs trying to overrun Marines outside of an embassy, torching vehicles, and trying to breach perimeters, this would be terrorism, Sean. And the ones who are paying the price, law enforcement on the ground. And so Donald Trump was right to send in the Guard, to activate the Marines, and now it's time to start following the money and prosecuting. And that's where I come out with all this. It's all nonsense, and there's a lot behind it.
Right, and there's their sign, no hate, but meanwhile they're, being very hateful to the police officers and law enforcement, everyone else involved here. But I just want to go back to the fundamental thing, which is this is not Donald Trump's fault. This is the fault of the leadership that started all this by turning this into a sanctuary state and a sanctuary city. That is the sort of original sin that was committed here. And if there weren't overwhelming numbers of illegals, there would never be a need to actually get them out, which is what Donald Trump, he's fulfilling his mandate. He's doing what the voters asked him to do. And I mean, this is why no one's ever tried to do this. It is hard to do. People do not want this to happen here in California, here in Los Angeles. Yeah. And all these people should be arrested, and there would be no more protests. They don't. The LAPD is so handcuffed, Aaron. I'm sure you know that. Right. They won't arrest them. They won't. They just let them mill around and take over the city. Like, why are they allowed to do that?
They can't arrest them and control this situation before it gets out of hand.
Trace, these aren't protests. These are precision-guided destabilization operations, in my opinion. I'm coming at this from the intelligence and counterterrorism lens. And the goal here is to collapse law enforcement's credibility, delegitimize the federal authority, and radicalize the next wave of violence. And they want this chaos in the streets. Pam Bondi's onto it. The FBI